Oh my God. So coming off of a tour with Mariah Carey took all of the money that I made from that tour and decided to throw a listening party of songs that I had written because I wanted to start selling my songs as a writer and get into production. And invited all of these industry people. Stevie J ended up being on that list because I met his brother who was playing the organ at a church in Long Island somewhere that I sang at. And he started telling his brother about this girl who just like every time she opens her mouth in anybody's church, she just destroys it. And so he's like, I need to come check her out. He never made it to the church. So he connected. I connected with Stevie. It was weird through his brother. I invited him to come to this party where I took all the money and the rent money to get this private venue so I could play my music.
New York?
In New York. And he didn't make it that night and I didn't hear from him. And several people didn't make it because I did it in Long Island and most of them were in the city, right?
Girl, you know no one's going to Long Island.
But I went to where I could afford to get a private room. So I looked up a private whatever and people decided it wasn't worth it to make the drive. So literally like most of the people that I invited. And so it was like crushing. I'm like, okay, so we're not going to have any place to live. And I ain't gonna be making music. And the crazy thing is that my phone rang the very next day. It was Stevie. He apologized for not making it. He said he got caught up in a session that ran over, but he asked me if I could come to the city and come by the studio to meet and talk. And so I said, sure, no problem. I went into the city and literally my life changed. He's a preacher's kid. I think people forget that about Stevie J. Mm-hmm. He is a preacher's kid and he grew up in church and in his dad's church, actually. So that was our common link. That's what we talked about. And because he heard about me from his brother, who was still a church musician, he starts playing all these church songs. I'm locked in a room with Stevie J singing church music, and Puffy walks by and hears me and walks in the room. He says hi to me, asks Stevie to step out the room. What that conversation on the other side of the door was, yo, who's that girl? And can you get her to sing again? I'm not gonna say nothing. Don't say nothing. Don't tell her I'm listening. Go back in there and get her to sing again. And he did. He just continued the conversation, all natural. I know it now. He was like, yo, you remember this song, blah, 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 by Vanessa Bell Armstrong? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I used to sing it all the time. So he starts playing it. I start singing it. He's going all in on the keys. I close my eyes, throw my head back, and I'm all in on the song. Puffy's actually in the room standing behind me, and I don't even realize he's there. What? So when I finished the song, I opened my eyes, and he was standing in front of me, and he was like, wow. He was like, I don't think I've ever heard anything that sounds like that. And in my mind, I'm going, I can't believe that. Like, you hear singing all the time. This is not possible that you've never heard somebody. But then he asked me, he was like, well, okay, so clearly you can sing. Can you write? I said, yeah. He said, follow me. Okay. So I walk out the room. Stevie walks out the room. We walk into the studio. There's a session going on with these guys. He stops the music, tells the guy in the booth to come out, tells the engineer, yo, throw on the so-and-so beat. And so I'm looking at him and I'm like, hi, everybody. I don't know anybody in the room. He's like, yeah, no, this is we're in this session. They'll get back to work in a minute. It's just a new guy group that I just signed from Atlanta. Turned out to be 112. Oh, okay. And so he has the engineer throw on a beat. Raw, no, like barely any chords in it. And he's like, okay, write something. So I see a pen and a pad and I pick it up and I start to write and he snatched the pad out my hand. He snatched the pen out my hand and he said, no, if you're a writer, write. And I'm looking at him like, oh my God. I literally just started singing any word that came into my head. I don't know if it made sense or not. I just made it sound pretty. And he thought it was ingenious. And he was like, yo, I need your information. You think you might want to do some work here? Like you sing on some stuff and maybe do some writing on some stuff. I'm like, heck yeah. I didn't believe he was going to call me. That was a Tuesday. He called me Wednesday afternoon and said, hey, I got a session happening this evening. Can you get into the city? I came in and sang on Horace Brown's record, I want you, babe. And that's me. All those backgrounds. That's the first.
I'm glad you started to sing because the chat room is like, please ask her to sing. Please ask her to sing.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know if they remember that song, but that literally was Horace Brown on Motown's first single. That's me on the background vocals. And that was my first time doing anything at Bad Boy at Daddy's House Studios. And literally he called me in to do something every day for about 30 days straight from that day moving. I was there every single day for about 30 days straight. He's just throwing music at me. I'm writing it and recording it. He's throwing music at me. I'm writing it and recording it. And those days were crazy. At Daddy's house, there was, and any producers or writers from back then, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There were 3 rooms. There was the Neve room, and it was named for the board that was in the room. There was the SSL room. It was named for the board that was in the room. These are top of the line recording equipment. And then there was the MIDI room. The MIDI room is this small pre-production room in between the Neve and the SSL. That's where I was with Stevie J when I first went in there. It was just drum machines and keyboards set up, and it's where the building of songs began, or where you would sit in a room to write if both studios were occupied at the time. And so I wrote and I sang on everything. And sometimes I was in one room writing on a track, and 112 would be in another room writing on the same track. Missy Elliott would be in another room writing on the same track. A young lady by the name of Mary Brown, who was known as a writer in the 90s, amazing singer too. She didn't like take off as a solo artist, but extremely talented, and a lot of people were calling her to write back then as well. She would be someplace else, and it was, so I guess that would have been like the modern version of a Motown, you know, headquarters, because there was music going on in every room. And when it got crazy, literally there'd be somebody in the break room, in the kitchen, sitting at the table, working on music. And we fought to have the best version of each one of us. Like, there were some days where he liked what 112 wrote over this beat better than what I did. So that's the version they went with, and we jumped on the next track. And there were some days when he liked what I wrote better than 112 did. So we went with the version of the song that Kelly wrote instead. And then times when it was either Mary, or it was Missy, or it was whoever he was bringing in. Like, it was insane, and it was a machine, and we never slept. And so much music came out. When you think about the music that cranked out of that wheelhouse between 1995 and 2001,
classics.
We never slept.
Era.
We never slept. We wrote all day, all night. We took naps and got back up and kept writing and kept recording.